Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Abby's kind of a grumpy pants today.
I'm so grumpy.
I know. Abby's having a rough day.
I don't want to be here.
She doesn't want to be here. She's all kinds of hot messiness. But that's not because you're bad. It's real.
I just laid everything today.
She was like, she's having all these like body problems today.
Yeah.
And I feel really bad for you. I have so much compassion after what I went through.
I know, thank God. I will say that that's really helped.
Yeah, you mean my ability to like have compassion because I've been through it.
Yeah. You were kind of a douche before that.
Well, nobody's going to argue with you here.
I'm just kidding.
I was pretty patient in some ways and pretty douchey in others. That's real.
I might be PMSy too.
I think you're PMSy.
Because I want to cry.
Welcome to The Connected Life. Where life is real. And, part of it is we started to record this and then I was like, no, I can't do it. And
yeah, we lost all the momentum. It was really funny. I thought we had some good banter.
I don't know. I didn't think it was as much as you thought it was. I was like, we need to stop. But, it's because there's so many other things going on. Mostly it's your fault. And that's not true. But I think it was interesting because I was thinking here as we sat down for this second go around. And we stood and we spent some time kind of like.
You made me say a lot of mantras.
I held your hands.
I can do this.
And then
I can do this. I'm powerful.
I grabbed you and I wrapped my arms around you. And I was like, okay, say it after me. I can do this. You're like, I'm going to do this. I was like, okay, kid, I can do this. I can do this.
One thing that you've learned to do that's, I don't know why more couples don't do this.
Yeah.
Is getting like cute and playful and jokey when tension is there.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I'm not doing good, instead of being like, what is wrong with you? You're like, you were like flopping my hands all around, like making funny.
And I joked about who needs to get tickled.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I mean, that one wasn't as funny to me.
No, you actually immediately, I watched her body tense up. It's like, oh my God, is he going to do it? It's so real.
I put my hands in front of my body like, don't touch me.
I'm just
all of the other things were funny, but that one was
Then
not.
she was on the edge of her seat. I think that part of why I kind of open with this.
You're exposing me! Just kidding.
Is because like, part of our heart goal with The Connected Life is being honest about the messiness.
What?
And it's not like we came in feeling like we were champions of our souls.
Well, I felt pretty good the first round. And then it was just like when we stopped, I don't know, all of the emotions of my life caught up with me.
Do you think you were pretty good consciously, but subconsciously you weren't?
Yes.
It probably gave room for that to come up.
100%.
Maybe I was feeling that too.
That is true. A million.
Yeah. I think that
I was grumpy this morning. I've been working all
morning
on like doing all the things I do to pull myself out of bad emotions.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of hurdles in life that we have to overcome and stuff like that. And sometimes we can feel like we're just failing or we're weak in an area and we just feel like, oh, this is what disqualifies me because I can't overcome these hurdles. And I think even today it's like I'm looking at you and I'm going, no, this doesn't disqualify you from getting on here. Not that you're like, oh, this disqualifies me. I'm just saying like in the midst of even pain that you're working out inside of yourself.
Wait, are you disqualifying me right now? Is that what you just said?
No.
You're weak. You have emotions. You can't lead a podcast.
Yeah, and welcome to marriage, where everything is turned against you, and you will eventually be thrown under a bus. No, that's very Eeyore-ish. Yeah.
No.
So I don't know. I think that that's something that would be worth talking about today, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I
would say pretty much my entire life is what we're talking about today.
Well, you mean feeling like there was a disqualifier written over you?
Oh, there were so many things that we don't have to call them disqualifiers so much as like, I would say like weaknesses.
Or hurdles or...
Yeah, like I think I grew up being
Would a word
very...
of like feeling inadequate or inadequacies, seeming inadequacies, would that be another way to say
Yeah,
it?
or just things that you think count you out or make you less than or... Yeah. You could use any of those words.
I remember, I'll let you go. I was just thinking of something about your life that popped into my head, actually.
Oh, what is it?
Well, I just remember, even for you, just jumping into the deep end of the pool, how your grandma was always really aggressive about you going to college and basically being like, you're never going to be anything if you don't go to college.
I had all my family confront me. Well, actually, my mom didn't, because my mom, she was the black sheep of the family, and she didn't go to college.
She was a wild card.
Oh, she hated control.
Totally.
She hated control. So when I didn't go to college, she was like, "Whoa, do what you want." And my dad, I don't remember him having opinions. He went to college so much in my life that I think he was like when he was 40, he went back to school again. He already had a master's before that, and he went back to school and started all over again.
You got a whole other degree. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think he always thought I could go at any given time. But my extended family...
Oh, it's one of those where you...
It was all they talked to me about for years.
Right. So...
It actually disconnected us pretty hardcore.
So you should definitely go dance on Grandma's grave, scream, "Look at me now, Grandma. Look at me now."
My favorite is that I remember I was working in a job, and I got this miraculous job in LA where I was making more money than I'd ever made before. And I just remember my grandma being like, "I will pay you $1,000 to go back to school." I was like, I make more than that.
Grandma, you don't understand money these days.
But I mean, like, it was just like that. It was like that. Yeah. And I don't know what to say about that.
I'm just saying it was like such a simple thing. There's simple things in our lives where we go, oh, people are disqualify ourselves or others disqualify us based on social rules or expectations of what life should look like.
Yes.
And if we're not doing that, it means nothing's ever going to happen for us. And there can be a very hopeless narrative that either others write over us or that we write over ourselves in the journey.
Well, and there's so much comparison right now. So you keep looking at like, well, this person made it and because they did these things, and then you're like, well, I can't be like that.
Yeah.
And so I know that this is a thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, is we all have our thing that we're like, but I've got this issue, or I'm not finished yet, or like I have clients that are like, well, I'm single, so that disqualifies me. And I have clients that are like, well, I don't have kids, so that disqualifies me. And I have people that are like, I've been divorced, and that disqualifies me. Like, there's all of these things that, or like, I'm not smart, and it disqualifies me. Or I haven't learned anything about my relationships until I'm in my 50s. So that just, it's like,
I have a master's, but I don't have a PhD.
Totally.
What does that even mean? I have a lot of clients too. We were talking about comparison a moment ago, where they come into my office and they're looking at what they're like, social media, and they're going, oh, I need to have that guy's amount of money or that guy's home or wealth or experience. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why? Well, I don't know. If I don't have it, then it means that I'm not a man, or that my life doesn't matter. I'm like, how did that all of a sudden define whether or not your life matters and be the standard? And why are you looking at your approach to life as weak? What if it's a beautiful gift, how you do life and your expression of yourself that actually heals people, empowers people, liberates your family? I don't know.
Yeah. So I think this has been something that I've been passionate about for years. And I remember sitting down with somebody. I was in a really discouraging moment of my life, kind of like today. No, I'm just
I was
kidding.
purity and my body was falling apart.
Yeah. No, I was in a really discouraging season, and I was talking to this guy, and he was telling me about this leader of a movement. And he's like, basically, he spent years being depressed, and it was out of him figuring out how to work out of that depression that is what created the movement that he's leading now. And I remember being there, and he's like, Abby, your weaknesses are what create strength. This is where creativity is birthed from. Yeah. And when I look back on my life is like the story of this. And I think I wish everybody would kind of take some time to look back on their life and see how their weaknesses have actually created strengths for them. Because what it does is it starts rewriting in your mind. So when I'm having a season of weakness, like I'm in a season of weakness now, my body has just it's been harder. I went on a medication in March, and ever since then, this is May, it's like all havoc has, like, it's just gone awful.
Erupted.
Everything. And so when I'm feeling really like sidelined and frustrated and lots of weakness, like I feel like, oh, there's lots of things I feel like I can't do. There's lots of things I can't be. There's lots of things I feel frustrated at. There's lots of things I see that I want to be doing. So limitations, I have a lot of limitations in this season that I'm frustrated with. When I have these things, I have to look at and remind myself of how our weaknesses actually can create momentum and can create beauty and can create redemption. Or else I would just get really discouraged.
Yeah. And and what you're doing is you're generating hope in getting into a higher truth.
Absolutely.
Like, I know that in my own life, hopelessness was a huge monster of mine. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what?
What? Well, it was because I'm looking at everything and I'm like, oh, I'm terrible here and nothing's working out for me here and blah, 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 blah. And you can literally build yourself a self-containing prison.
100%.
It's a self-containing mental prison. And I look at guys like Nick Vujicic. Is that how you say his last name?
Oh, I don't know how you say it, but he's a freaking boss.
Yeah, I think his biggest limitation is his last name that I can't pronounce.
He has no arms and no legs.
And everything about his life, like, I mean, I remember one of my favorite moments is as he came out of the audience on Oprah. I remember this one Oprah one, and he comes out of the audience, hopping down the aisle.
Totally.
I mean, he's like how would you put it? I mean, what would you describe him as? He looks. This sounds great. I mean,
don't even try to say it.
Don't say it.
No.
Hey, no arms, no legs. He's hopping.
Yes.
And he's hopping down, and he hops up the stairs, one stair at a time. Bam, 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 until he gets up there. And you've seen this life that says, all I should have, everything about my life says limitation.
Yeah. Weakness,
everything about my life says, I can have nothing, I'll be nothing, I'll do nothing. But everything actually got turned into this massive momentum and a story of transformation and a story of empowerment for people all over the world.
And he's brought hope to so many people. I know, like, we had a friend who their town was struggling with suicide, and he actually came and talked, because I think something hits real home when you see somebody who has no arms and no legs and who was suicidal and then made a life he loves. You're like, frick, I have
no reason to complain and moan.
Yeah.
And just stay stuck in this.
And yes. And it's real interesting because we can get stuck. And that's something that I've been really working through this week is all of my limitations are really in my face, and whatever we look at magnifies. And so if you're always looking at your weaknesses and what's disqualifying you and what you don't have, and that's a part of envy. Envy is I'm looking at someone else and I'm thinking about what I don't have instead of seeing other people and seeing what's possible for my life.
What can I create? What can I do? What can be birthed out of this?
Yeah. And I think there's this voice of disqualification that some of us can listen to. I remember, and then we're going to share some of our personal things, but I was at this conference with this woman, and she'd been homeless, and she got pregnant, wasn't married, and was a teenager, and was homeless, and all these things. And she ended up becoming a millionaire.
You made that up.
No, this is a true story.
Nobody gets out of those types of conditions. That's absurdity. That's impossible.
Yeah, if you're born
show me evidence
in a bad situation, you're screwed for life.
Yeah,
There's no hope. So anyway, I remember sitting at her conference, and I wasn't in the same situation. I wasn't homeless, and I didn't have a kid. But even listening,
is this Danny?
Yeah,
I love her story. Go ahead.
Even listening to her, I felt disqualified. I was like, yeah, but you're a different kind of woman than me. You're more direct. You have more like she felt like a powerful person, and I was like, I'm just not like that.
Yeah, I mean, you were a powerful person from the get-go. I'm not that, so of course you could climb out of your crappy circumstance.
Totally. And it was just so funny how like that voice of disqualification, even when I was listening to somebody who's
inspiring and changed their whole life around.
Yes.
So some of you might actually have those little monsters, and some like you might go, yeah, those little monsters all run around. You're never gonna make it. You're not enough. But you may be like, oh, I don't have that. Not in an overarching way, but you might have that in little ways. So you may feel like I am so strong and capable and powerful in all these arenas, but there might be that one, like the people who sometimes come into my office who have generated great amounts of success in tangible standards outside of their immediate heart or relationships. But I get them in my office and they're like, I just can't do relationships. I don't know how to talk to my daughter. Totally. That's not possible. I could never do that. And I'm like, yeah, you got a disqualifier right here. And then they'll share about their broken childhood, which is legitimate. That seems like, yeah, this should be the reason why I can't do this. But what if it was an invitation? Yeah. An invitation to not only like learn a little bit, but actually become massively great and powerful in that area.
And I'd say most of us have an area of weakness because most of us are not great in every single area.
You mean there's not a Superman out there or Superwoman?
So annoying.
Yeah.
So stop trying to be that if you're out there.
Yeah.
Just be happy with being great in some things and harder in other things.
So let's jump into your disqualifiers and we'll talk about a little bit of mine.
Well, again, I didn't think I was disqualified for all of these reasons. I'm just saying like these were weaknesses of mine. So I think I was dyslexic. I am dyslexic. Mm-hmm. It's an ongoing condition. And so when I was a kid, like there were things that I couldn't grasp, I couldn't pick up, I couldn't understand. And so much of what we help people do, I help people learn how to love themselves, and I help people learn how to have self-compassion on themselves and how to have patience. You cannot love yourself without having patience for yourself. Yeah. And I learned patience for myself with dyslexia. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't know I was dyslexic when I was a kid, but I did know this thing. Like I may not pick things up quick there's some things I pick up fast, but there's some things that takes me a while to pick up, but once I pick them up, I'm like, I've got them for good. Yeah. And that is the thing about dyslexia. Your short-term memory is smaller, but your long-term memory is fine. And so it is really true. You have to learn things over and over again till it's in your long-term memory.
Very deliberate about how you program your thinking.
Yeah. And so when I think about, like, when I teach people about how to be patient, I'm like, patient towards themselves. That came for me out of being dyslexic.
Yeah, it was birthed out of that.
Like this thing that would be called a weakness, this thing that would and I just worked with this girl who's just like, she's 12 years old and she's like, I feel so stupid. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, you are not stupid at all. Yeah. And because the other thing that dyslexia did for me is they say that a huge amount of CEOs are dyslexic or have ADHD.
I was actually going to just point that out. Mm-hmm. So people who have dyslexia have actually had to think in a certain way and persist in a certain way that produced this sense of excellence, opportunity, leadership.
Well, I would say they have to do out-of-the-box thinking. Yeah. And what they learn, so a great way to explain dyslexia is, let's say everybody goes on the freeway from one destination to the next destination. A dyslexic person, the freeway doesn't work. So they have to take all the back roads and they have to figure out another route to every destination that they go to. But what that means is if you get stuck on the freeway, if there's a traffic jam on the freeway, you don't have any hope. You don't know what to do.
Yeah, because you're like, I wouldn't.
I've only been on the freeway.
It's the freeway. I don't think any different than this one like linear way of thinking.
But for us, I'm like, well, I've had to go around a million things. So when I get stuck, I'm like, oh, we'll just find another way. We'll find another idea.
It's actually true. Abby's really, I mean, the terminology we use is powerful in the sense of, she'll always be like, why are you being powerless? Just make another, just come up with a solution. And everyone around her is always like, there is, because she's spent her entire life trying to find out another option.
So many roadblocks.
I was just walking
I always get stuck. I have to find a new thing to get out of this.
My parents were watching a guy walk the other day, and he was just like walked right into a wall. And it's such a perfect example of so many of us who all of a sudden bump into a wall. And we bump into a wall once in our life. And we're like, what are we going to do? There's a wall. And you're like, I hit that thing so many times. I got bruises and I realized you can just walk around it.
Totally.
Like,
well, and I'd say that with dyslexia, it's given me perseverance and persistence.
Yeah.
Because I learned at a young age, like the things that didn't come fast, I had to keep working for. But I learned it, however long it takes me, I'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
So in life, even if I'm like, let's say I'm working on shame, that has nothing to do with dyslexia. Like that's just an emotional hurdle that I'm trying to overcome. I have way more patience for my process.
Yeah,
like
you
I
do.
watch people try really hard and then they give up because they haven't gotten there yet. And I'm
Totally.
like, but I don't have that give up button because I had to learn this thing called dyslexia, ADHD. I had both of them. Actually created these incredible life skills for me that are part of the reasons that I have values and gifts to give to the world.
So there's invitations in all of the every hurdle, every limitation comes with an invitation.
Absolutely.
To an invitation into empowerment, into possibilities.
Yeah.
So
what is one that for you?
You know, I think of this, I've talked about this before, but I've had the hurdle in my life with male masculinity, male authority figures, masculinity in general, where my history was I felt not only disconnected from male authority figures, but when it came to connecting to men in general, especially through high school, middle school, I felt like I was on the outside looking in at all times.
Yeah.
Like I felt almost the imagination would be like if you saw a football team huddled together.
Right.
And I'm standing and they're all in jerseys, uniforms. I'm not wearing a uniform.
Right.
I'm just standing way outside of it and they're kind of talking. And occasionally the only the emotion would be like, they look over at me and kind of would joke inside of the circle about me, the kid being on the outside.
This is the worst.
It's real. It's funny too, because at one point I had that imagination, like that came up in an inner healing.
Yep.
And I watched myself walk up to the group of guys, get into the middle of them and see them throw me up on their shoulders and start cheering for me.
Totally.
And that imagery shifting inside of me shifted the way I approach men.
Yep.
But so there was this ongoing hurdle of like, why don't I feel like I fit in or I'm part of them?
Yeah.
And there was even pieces of me that I realized like part of it was my own self-rejection. Part of it was that I saw also inside of the scope of masculinity that was presented, there was a lot of dominance and abuse in their in exchanges. It wasn't actually loving and inviting. And so what I realized is part of it wasn't that I was broken or just rejected. It's that I had a component that was actually meant to be an invitation to the men who were huddled together in their pain and an invitation for them to come out of it and to find a new form of masculinity.
Yeah.
So two things happened. One, I started overcoming my hurdle of rejection that I had on myself and seeing myself as beautiful, wonderful, carrying something that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
And so in overcoming that hurdle of rejection, seeing that there was a gift for men and then creating an invitation for them. And that ultimately birthed in me creating the Liberation Project, a movement for manhood, the former podcast I used to do.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was this drawing of tens of thousands of men actually to the podcast.
And all over America, men are creating community around it and they're having conversations with it. And they're like literally the thing that you felt on the outside of you created.
Yep. And what I saw through my hurdle or where I felt disqualified is that men across the world were feeling the same thing as if they were on the outside looking in, hoping to be part of that group. Right. And now all of a sudden they had an on-ramp, they had a doorway to go know each other and feel like, oh no, we're all in this together. We all love each other. We all have similar fears, insecurities. And so that became some massively beautiful thing that birthed out of that.
It's this huge, I mean, like the amount of like the conference that you guys put on and the amount of feedback and letters that we got from people listening to the podcast, like, and this is what I am saying, like this thing that was painful for you.
Felt really detrimental.
What created this core value that launched so many people.
Something inside of me was screaming, I want to give this away. I want to make a way where there seems to be no way for other people that I perceived were all in the same mind trap.
And I see that a lot. Like a lot of times the pain that we have gone through ends up being like it paves a way, a road. It becomes the thing that we have to be able to give away.
In whatever arena. And I see that people, a lot of times people who become quote unquote super successful in certain arenas, it's because they had a pain or a problem or something in that area where they're like, I'm bound and determined to actually overcome this. And it becomes an open door for everyone else because they end up blazing a trail in some arena.
Absolutely. So I was thinking about how when I grew up, like I had so much self-hatred, so suicidal, so tormented, so much anxiety. I mean, same with you.
Yeah, there was a very similar circumstance for both of us.
Yeah, I was tormented in every way. And so, like, when you look at what I'm doing with my life now, like, the message I got known for was loving yourself, which is radical because that is everything opposite of what I experienced. But because there was so much pain in that area, I was like, I'm going to spend years fighting out of this.
Yep.
I'm going to push. I'm going to keep running after love. I'm going to learn how to be kind to myself. I'm going to learn how to not agree with death. I'm going to learn how to let people love me and all of the things. And then all of a sudden, years later, I mean, honestly, it was a long journey. It was like 15 years. But years later, that's the thing that people message me about all the time is like, oh, hearing about learning how to love yourself has changed my life. It's the thing. Like I would have laughed so hard at you if you would have told me when I was growing up, you'll be known for loving yourself.
There'll be a theme of your life.
You'll lead a movement for people to agree with love and life and joy.
And you'll show them how to get healing. Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's same for me. I felt so incredibly broken in the arena of my soul that and believing that was almost a permanency.
Yeah. I think that happens. I think when you're in an intense moment, it feels like this is going to last forever. I'm always going to be screwed up. I'm always going to be stuck here.
Yeah. And if you told me like, oh no, you're actually going to have fully conquered suicidal emotions. You're going to have fully conquered these different areas of your life. I would have been like, no. And especially if they're like, and then you're going to teach others, I would have been like, that's ludicrous.
Oh, totally.
So I agree. But something inside of me rose up and said, I cannot accept this as my normal. I cannot accept this as this thing that looms over me and disqualifies me. I remember even for me, defeat was like this huge, strong emotion where I'm like, I'm defeated. I don't like the word powerless would have been like written right across my forehead in conjunction with super capable. It was weird because I had this dueling battle of like in one arena I felt super capable, but this other arena I was like, I feel super defeated and powerless. And what it did is it became this thing almost like a challenge.
Yep.
You know, when we say invitation, it's even this challenge of like, no, I have to make this puzzle work.
Yes.
And so I chipped away at it until I'm like, oh no, I know what it is to build power in a certain arena.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'll talk about another area because I think people get disqualified in their heads from this. I grew up with a lot of stress about money. We finances were hard for us when I was growing up. And when I look back, like there's a couple things that I see. I had so much value for things that I did get. Like when people gave me gifts, or things, it felt so incredible.
Oh, the gratitude that you carry when you receive something is through the roof.
Yeah, because of that. And I also look at, the car situation, when I got a car, we bought a car for $500 back then. And it was, it was a piece of crap. It was definitely a piece of crap. And then I think that car broke down as a $500 car would. And then I drove my mom's, and my mom had this grandma gangster car. It was like 20 years old. I don't know how that, they used to build cars better than they do now, but it was like a boat. You could have had a slumber party on the hood and the trunk. It was ginormous. And besides it, it was like a grandma gangster car. Like that's what people would say. Like either grandmas or gangsters drive this car. But so I remember driving it, and I remember the first few times, like I'm so embarrassed, right? Like it's just this, you can't miss it. It's huge. And then I don't have depth perception. That's part of my that's part of my dyslexia. And so parking that thing was a mess. I remember literally getting like, this is me. I got stuck in a parking spot because I couldn't move forward or move back without hitting a car. And I didn't know what to do. I literally like just prayed. I was like, dear God, send somebody to help me. Me and Pizza are both in the car and in a parking lot, just like in an awkward angle. And then somebody comes up to the door and is like, oh, are you guys stuck? Let me. And they like literally helped us maneuver it out. But when I bring that up, I just remember like,
just so you know, this part where she couldn't park the car because of depth perception.
That still exists.
That's still a problem. It's probably not going to change.
No, I will literally like, I'll get to a tight parking spot and I'll jump out and be like, Justin, you got to park it. I don't know what to do.
That's so real.
But what was I saying? Oh, okay. So money was tight. And so there's like, I never had the trendiest clothes. We didn't have trendy cars. We didn't have like, there was never anything that comes with money that is flashy. I didn't have,
no.
You know, or like, even just like, you don't have to be rich, but like maybe like middle class. We weren't.
She was ramen noodles poor.
Well, no, we had like what hamburger helper. We definitely did like hamburger helper.
That's ramen noodles.
That's not. Listen, we always had food, so I'm very thankful.
Yeah,
for
you
that.
did.
Okay.
You did.
But what I am saying is that it broke this thing in me about caring what I look like.
You did.
It broke ego. It broke performance.
Yep.
It broke that thing of like, so I don't look at people who drive nice cars and be like, oh, you must be awesome. And I don't look at people who drive crappy cars and be like, oh, you must be like, it broke judgment for me.
Yeah.
And like, so now if I'm driving in a super crappy car, I don't even like, I would never think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where I know a lot of people have like a status thing and they like really care. If my outfit gets stained on it, like I'm still going to be okay. I'm going to feel comfortable with myself. Like I remember a couple years ago, I got burns on my face. We were in Hawaii and I had like,
which by the way, she is a better human being than me because of this. Because I still got a little bit of ego where I'm like, I don't know if I want to drive that to this special event. That's pretty bad. The picture of the car in my head has rust and it's
No. Listen, people, and see, none of that matters. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter what the car looks like. It doesn't matter what your clothes look like.
No, totally.
So I can walk out in public. Like I know a lot of girls.
No, and it's clear to me you don't care.
Well, like when I remember your mom, actually, she came and had an 8-week migraine. And I would leave the house with no makeup. My hair, didn't look good. And your mom would be like, I can't believe you can leave the house like this. And she was genuinely like in awe.
Yeah, she wasn't like even being critical. She was like, this is wild.
Like I could never do this. And I'm like, oh, well that came from me not being able to like I had an eye patch. I got over real quick. What do people look at me?
I had an eye patch. Yeah.
I'm like, people are going to stare at me. Like I just kind of embraced. And so like, there's a lot of things. And so I'm playful in public. Yeah. Like I taught you a lot about having fun in public because I just didn't care entirely what people thought, and that came from all of those areas.
Right.
And
so
I would say
if you're not seeing stuff like this as a disqualifier, and you can actually begin the process of freedom.
Yeah. What's the gift in this?
This place where I am seemingly weak, or I lack, or I have a history of a hurdle, I can actually become the best version of myself through this.
And I can see that it's creating good in me.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing that I want to tell people is like, oftentimes I see people, they have a weakness, they have shame about it. So then they find out how it's helping them. So like what I just said with the money would be like, yes, when you have no money, you don't care what people think. So it's better than having money. And I'm like, I'm always wanting to find the gift. Having no money has taught me these things, but I don't want to justify staying there for it. So exactly. I'm on the journey of learning how to.
So like not having money gave me a total amount of freedom. It killed my ego.
I have so much courage with finances.
Right.
Because I'm like, well, let's try this. If everything goes away, I've already lived that way.
Yeah, I've already lived without, so no big deal. So, but then what it becomes then is an invitation to become powerful in that arena, not just go, I'm gonna build a judgment against people who have money or people who can. I remember one hurdle, like, I mean, basically. I mean, I don't know how else to put this. You didn't know how to be pretty. was the concept, or the feminine beauty embracing. That was something you said, I don't know how to be pretty or do that, but you felt
womanly.
Yeah, womanly was part of it. And it was like, oh, it's not that you don't know how to be pretty, and it doesn't mean putting on makeup makes you pretty, but like the whole journey of like, no, I want to grow, I want to learn and how to express myself inside of this arena. It wasn't that you're more pretty now because you can put on makeup.
Yeah.
Or dress a certain way or do your hair a certain way. It's just, oh, I learned how to also not only accept myself where I was, but grow in an area that actually I had value for.
Yeah.
You actually had value for that area, which is totally fine.
Yeah. So another area that I would say people like to disqualify themselves is like the family that they come from.
Yeah.
And so I would say both of us came from families where there was brokenness in them.
No.
We had the perfect. I mean, I watch people and they think that if they had the perfect family, they could be where they needed to go. I know so many people like, well, my parents never gave me these experiences. Well, my parents never taught me this. Well, my parents never. And the truth is, I think it's worth grieving the things you didn't get, but you can't get stuck there.
Right. Otherwise, that's being a complete victim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for us, I would say, so much of what we do with our lives is because of the pain of our childhoods.
Yep.
Like both me and you had a lot of pain and we had to work through stuff. And so the working through stuff is now what I help people do.
It's so funny because as you're talking, I'm reminded of this kid, Ryan, and I went to high school with him, and he was born with the gift of a giant lower torso. Torso,
okay,
and a very small upper body. You're like, what does that mean? So he looked like a 200-pound man from the waist down, but from the waist up, looked like a 100-pound man.
Oh, interesting.
So he was all calves and legs.
Yeah.
So he was like this superhuman with super agility to run faster than anybody. Right. So as a kid, he could outrun anybody in track and field all the time.
Yeah.
But because of this great strength that seemingly was his natural gift somehow given to him, he did nothing. He was so lazy. He avoided going to practice. He showed up to events and would roll in and get first or second place and stuff. But could have been an Olympian.
Oh, totally.
But because it was so easy in his mediocrity to just show up, it ended up becoming one of his greatest hindrances.
Absolutely.
And so you were talking about people who were born with the perfect families. There are people born with what seemingly is the perfect situation, but then there
really is no perfect situation.
There is no perfect situation.
There's no perfect family.
No, not at all.
I've never met one person, and we've met with thousands of people. I've never met one person where I was like, oh, you have a perfect family.
But let's just say this picture perfect family we think we have, or all the best given to us to actually sometimes that becomes the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the excess or the seemingly perfect situation, because then they're never going, I have to actually put the effort in and discover who I am and what I really have inside of me. And so there's so many of you living out there using an excuse that like, what if I had these better circumstances? I'm like, those better circumstances may have been your biggest disqualifier. Now, I'm not saying that people haven't had these great circumstances that were actually springboards for them and they did utilize them, and you can utilize them and go, yeah, and then I took this great circumstance and then wanted to pursue learning, growing, becoming whatever. But I'm just saying you can't use that as an excuse.
Absolutely. Yeah. Weakness is the invitation. Disqualification is an invitation, and strength is an invitation. The truth is, but I would say I haven't met a person who has a picture perfect life who hasn't had to overcome things.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think
not real.
And overcoming, some people choose defeat, or you can choose to see how could this create beauty for my life. So I would say one of your weaknesses was that there was so much pain inside your family.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And inside of that, I started going on this journey of going, I want to understand how we as humans function.
Yeah.
I didn't even think one day I want to get paid. I mean, that's not true. I had a desire, like at one point I had a dream where I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to get paid to talk to people. And it was hidden inside of me as something that I wanted and longed for. But I didn't pursue transformation thinking I'm going to get paid for it. In fact, I believed I'd never get paid for it.
Yeah.
But the thing was, I was like, I am determined to understand the human condition, the human heart, the experience. I'm determined to understand what drives me, what makes me function. And I'm determined to inject that into my family system. Like, I want to bring whatever I can find, new truths into the family system, which was a huge thing. And it provoked something that gave me keys to humanity that were really universal.
Yeah.
We're all very different and we're all very alike. But because of it, it gave me this huge opportunity.
Yeah. And I've watched you have had to push through stuff with your family. Mm-hmm. And because your family...
It's like like at times it feels like going through tar.
Totally.
Like, no, I'm going to keep moving.
But because of the dysfunction in your family and you pushing through, actually so many people in your family have gotten healing.
Yeah.
And then so many people, like the Father series that you did on the Liberation Project, the Father series that we just released, that we're releasing, is all birthed out of this. We've done so much stuff with your mom and reconciliation. So many people have been changed by the hope of the story of your family.
Yeah.
And that's because your family was actually so broken. And so if you thought, oh, well, I'm disqualified because we're a mess.
Yep.
Like that is not
because I could have looked at my family and been like, nope, I come from a really broken background and this is just what it is. And
I have trauma in my past, so I'm probably not going to get ahead, or I'm probably not even going to
I'm probably not going to have a great marriage.
People.
Things probably aren't going to work out. It's just not in the cards for me. And I've had countless number of people come to me and they look at something like this and they go, it's just not in the cards for me.
Right.
And I'm like, why? And then they're bitter about their history. They're like, I wish I would have got this or that. And I'm like, okay, you can continue to be bitter. You can continue to have resentment. You can continue to be powerless in this area, or you can now see how this does not actually disqualify you.
Yeah. I mean, I think about our marriage, and I think the greatest strength in our marriage is that we both came from marriages that were so bad.
And there was a determination inside of this that we will figure out
we're going to fight for this.
What good could look like.
Yeah. I've never seen this.
That doesn't even mean we have the right standard of good. We're just we're fighting for it. We continue to fight for what could good, what could healthy, what could freedom inside of a marriage look like.
Yeah. So like, I think about most of the reasons we've been driven to actually pay a price for our marriage, the reason that we've spent so much energy creating healthy and working through stuff is because we saw how bad it could be.
Yeah.
And we were determined not to do that. And that's why, again, you can either sit in a circumstance and be like, I don't have this, or that circumstance can be the very thing that is shaping you. Mm-hmm. For something you're made for. I have, we know several people that were in the sex industry.
Oh yeah.
That were sex trafficked.
We have a relationship with several people.
And now they lead movements of women and husbands and families and social workers, and to actually get out of that. And so like, even if you've just made choices in your life and you're like, my weakness is the choices I've made. Yep. The things that I have done is actually what has caused pain. Well, even that gets to be used. And this is the hope for me that I live with, is that anything can be redeemed. Mm-hmm. Like that anything in my life. And that's kind of, so when I sit in my moment of life right now, right? My body is doing so bad. So I have to consciously think, okay, I feel weakness and I feel limitation. I have to consciously think, okay, this is not the end of the story. This does not mean that this will be permanent. There will be a day when I look back at this moment and I see that there's been overcoming, and that my journey through this has also helped people and empowered people. And I always feel like whatever you get to overcome, you pave a way for other people to overcome.
Yeah.
And whatever transformation you get is contagious. It gets to transform other people. And so the heart of talking through this is actually even just reminding ourselves when we're in moments. Like, I know I've been processing through some pain from my past that I wasn't aware of, that just like, oh, hello. Showed up.
Where did
Hi
that come
there.
from? Oh, wow.
Oh, you've been hiding under the rug for a while?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's what happens when you sweep things under
I'm
the rug.
here to get you.
Ah! And so in that moment, I can either be like, oh, there's still more, or will this ever end? Or like,
Oh, yeah.
this journey will also be freedom for people. This journey will also throw my life forward. This will empower me.
I remember that even in stuff happening with your mom in the last couple of years, and you specifically having a realization of the depth of your codependency.
Yeah.
And facing that. Instead of being like, oh man, I initially, like when it came up, you're like, oh crap, I'm so codependent. Like as the realization hit, and you could have been like, that is a mountain I don't think I'm going to climb. Instead, you were like, no, this is great. Everything falling apart with my family actually works to my benefit.
Yeah, I'm going to learn how to not be codependent in the exact situation that is what caused the codependency.
The very thing that created it in the beginning is now going to be the thing that liberates me.
Oh, yeah. It feels like a very...
It's an approach to life that you have to be willing to adopt. Like what we're talking about here today is changing your entire approach to life. Will you adopt a mindset that this is an invitation into an expression of freedom and greatness, or are you going to continue to look at this as just lack and limitation?
Absolutely. I had this vision when I was younger. And I saw like 9 screaming babies on the ground, and then I had my arm around one adult, and I just felt this like intuitive voice say, "These 9 screaming babies are all the gifts and talents that you have decided aren't yours, and so you haven't picked them up. Yeah. The one adult next to you is the one that you decided was yours." So when I was a kid, I knew I was emotionally intelligent. I didn't think I was good at anything else, but I knew I was good at that. So I took emotional intelligence. I like bathed it. I read it. I took it to soccer practice. I fed it, I read books.
You nurtured
and I had
the
conversations, and I went to counseling. Like I nurtured that baby. So it grew up to be an adult. And I remember this feeling of like, oh, those 9 screaming babies, you're right. You can't grow and nurture something that you've decided isn't yours.
Right.
And so
I just don't have that in that arena. I don't have creativity. So here's a child of creativity that's yours, but you've decided that's not mine. So I can't nurture it because there's no connection to it.
Yeah. I was like, I'm just not creative. I'm just not womanly.
That's someone else's child.
Yeah. And so another one of the things that we're basically talking about is the idea of whatever has been holding you back can actually be the thing that strengthens you. It's a lot like resistance training when you work out. Like you can move your arms up and down for a long time, and that's not going to get you a great workout. Yeah. If you have some weights, which is resistance, you can actually build stronger faster.
I'll say just a couple other spots. I know that in my world, I didn't feel like I had any natural gifts, and a lot of people feel like that.
Yes.
Like I don't have any natural talents, and we think that everyone's natural and these people who are amazing and quote unquote gifted have a natural talent. And there may be some inherent things that they're born with that are there, but everything that we've like the guy Ryan that I talked about, he may have naturally been physically built in a certain way that empowered something. But if that child wasn't actually nurtured, like we're talking about, it doesn't go very far. Yeah. And so the thing that I started learning inside of believing that I don't have anything natural inside of my world is like, all right, well, I get to learn how to be good at learning. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I could build anything inside of my life if I wanted to put focused intent inside of it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. If it doesn't feel natural to me, I'll make it natural.
Yes. I wish people knew this. This changed my life when it went from you either have something or you don't to you can grow gifts and talents. Like I may never be Michael Jordan good at basketball, but if I wanted to get good at basketball, I could become much better than I am. Mm-hmm. And when I decided I wanted to become good at creativity, I get people all the time. They're like, will you do hair and makeup tutorials? And I laugh because I'm like, I was so bad at those things. Mm-hmm. But I just was like, okay, I'm going to grow this skill. I'm not natural at any of that. I had somebody walk into our office and be like, your office looks so pretty. I'm like, that is literally the thing I'm the least gifted at. But I was like, I'm going to dig in. I remember when I decorated my first room, like real room, it was my first office. I tried decorating my room in college, but it was rough. But when we did my office,
yeah,
and I had to carry up 500 million things, like rugs,
she literally
desks,
she would
up
just
and
have
downstairs,
stacks of rugs. She'd be like, here, let's put these in. And I was like, oh my God, I have to help you.
Yes, because I couldn't visualize. I can't, it's part of the dyslexia. I can't visualize how a room's going to look. I brought all these desks. I'd have to put the desks together from scratch, see it in the room, realize that it didn't work in the room, take the desk apart, go and return it. Like Justin was like, there's like so many thousands of dollars on our credit card. I'm like, oh yeah, it'll all be returned in a day. Like that's just, I had to. But the idea was, I was like, I'm not going to let that. It's not natural to me or that it's hard to me. I'm going to spend hours on Pinterest looking at how they put things together. I'm going to spend hours trying this. I'm going to ask my friends for input. I'm going to get help. Like all of this stuff is, I'm not going to just decide because I feel weak in this area that the weakness in this area is going to define my life and limit me.
Yeah. I think I had one other area. I mean, we're just kind of giving you different arenas, trying to give you guys like ideas to spark, because what we're hoping that is happening while we're talking is you're starting to go, okay, in this area, I felt like my history disqualified me. A relationship disqualified me. A way of doing things disqualifies me, or has been my biggest hurdle that I just didn't think I could be good in. Like, we're hoping that it starts sparking you to think, like, what is mine? What is the list of things where I just think there's lack and limitation or there's defeat inside of it?
Or even just looking back over your history and redefining, like, oh, I actually always saw that as bad. Now I see that as really incredible. Now I see that wasn't a weakness. That was actually creating a strength.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel self-hatred for the dyslexic girl anymore. I don't feel sad about the poor girl. Like, I don't look at those. I don't have, I can love that person and feel proud of that person and feel thankful for that person. Where I think a lot of people, they just try to leave the parts of their childhood that they didn't like, or the parts where they felt weak. They just try to like disassociate from it.
Oh yeah. And there's also definitions that we put on ourselves. Like, for instance, one of mine was, I didn't feel like I was naturally inclined to mechanical thinking. Yeah. Like mechanical, like
your dad is a mechanical genius.
Right. So he's an electrician, and he can come into something and go, okay. And all of a sudden he sees the picture inside of his head. And he's like, I can put it together like this, and then we'll add this. And I'm going, I don't understand that. That's just not me. But in time, I started learning, I defined that wasn't me, but it wasn't that it wasn't me. It's that I didn't have the foundational tools of thought of how to approach things. As I started like digging into it, I started realizing like, no, I'm actually really mechanical and really smart. I just needed those foundations, and now I do it.
And I'd say even the other thing is, I think you felt stupid when you saw how your dad's mind worked, but then you're an emotional genius.
Right. Like,
you understand how people work.
And him and I have had that conversation.
Like, you understand how people work.
I'll sit down across from someone, I'll go, here's everything going on in your world. And they'll be like, no, it's not. That's not what's driving me. I'm like, yeah, it is. Give yourself and then all of a sudden they go on a couple month journey, right? Like, and they come back and like, how did you know? How did you see that in 2 seconds? But that's literally my dad.
Or sometimes you can do that and people will instantly break.
Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, that makes sense suddenly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the whole point is like my dad on this other side, he would walk into a room and he would tell full-blown, high-level inspectors, government inspectors, this is the entire problem. And he's an electrician, and they're looking at an issue that has nothing to do with electrical. And you go, here's the problem with everything going on over here. And they'll be like, you don't know, you're the electrician. And later on, it'd hit them, and they go, how did you see that?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. So, but what I'm saying is, when you defined his smart as smart, then you felt dumb.
Yep.
But part of that even is redefining, like, hey, actually, you weren't dumb ever.
No.
You had to learn how to learn, but also you had were smart
There
in
was
ways that you
brilliant strengths.
hadn't counted.
And some of you have brilliant strengths inside of your life that you haven't even counted because you've looked in an entire other arena and said, I can't do it over there.
Yeah.
It means I'm not only disqualified in that arena, but I am disqualified in all arenas.
Yeah.
I'm stupid in all places because I don't know how to figure out this over here.
Yeah, I just talked about that girl, the 12-year-old that I'd met with, and I was telling her, like, my best friend, they told her, you'll never work at something beyond McDonald's level. Not that that's bad, but that's the highest kind of job you'll ever be able to
Right.
get.
You don't have any capacity.
Yeah,
you're going to be able to do maybe a service industry,
Yeah.
but anything that is going to be outside that
thinking
bounds.
you'll never be able to do. But she's a creative genius, and she's launched multiple very successful businesses. And so it's, but her brain thinks differently. And so I was talking to this girl being like, hey, you might feel like you're dumb at reading and math. That's actually not all that life is. But she felt like such a great example of all humanity. We focus on the one thing that we think we should be good at. And I'm like, I actually talked to her for a long enough time to find out she was really smart. And again, this goes back to dyslexia taught me so much, but you can be dyslexic and have a high IQ.
Yeah.
Dyslexia has nothing to do with IQ. So dyslexia means the way your brain processes might be harder, but you can be smarter. You could have a higher IQ than other people who aren't dyslexic.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of the way I think about life. Like, disqualifications aren't the final word.
Yep.
You might be disqualified over here, but you might actually be smarter over here.
Totally.
There might be things that you are gifted and talented at.
So you guys, homework and a couple things. So first off, before we give you homework, just a heads up, pre-orders launched. Woo! We've said it before, the Father series.
I'm so excited about how many people are ordering this thing.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
It's super cool.
It's incredible, and it's a great deal. We're doing a sale for the pre-orders until June 17th, which is
June 16th.
I'm making
Father's
up
Day.
Numbers.
Yeah.
Dyslexic.
June 16th, Father's Day. That's when it officially launches and gets shipped out, but pre-orders up until then. There's a discount, a $20 discount for singles and over $300 discount for 5-packs. Groups of bundles, but we're really excited about that going out there and helping people get restoration. That's a 12-part audio series with about 12 hours of audio plus an in-depth workbook.
Yeah, we basically came out of us in our family having to work through a lot of the pain, and we want to be able to help you do that faster.
Yeah, so that's where the workbook walks you on a journey and has a full-blown leadership guide inside of it. So apart from that, you can go to Justin and Abi, JUSTIN and ABI.com. ABI.com/shop, and you can go ahead and get on that. Now, as for homework, the big homework.
I think we already talked about it. I would love for people to actually go back through what they had previously disqualified them for and actually begin to change their mindsets on.
Totally. So write that down.
Yeah.
Huge list of that.
And go back to places in your life and see, oh, I thought this thing broke me. What are all the good things that came from it, though?
Yep. And ask somebody around you, like, hey, if you feel disqualified in a certain arena, be like, hey, do you see strengths? People that you love, that trust, that have hopeful attitudes. Do you see areas in my life where I'm really strong and capable and that, like, where I've turned stuff to the better? Like, maybe you'll get some feedback and people will be like, oh, yeah, actually, I realize in your life, you came from this history and you've done this. And you go, oh, I didn't even see that. I needed someone else's perspective outside of me.
And if you're feeling victim-y or hopeless or like, but my life was too hard, go look up Nick Vujicic.
Yeah.
We don't know how to spell it, but if you look for armless, legless man, you'll probably find it.
Inspirational, armless.
Yes, inspirational.
I'm sure if Nick hears this, he's going to be like, thanks for the plug, guys,
I know,
guess.
That's the worst. We love you, though.
Yeah, that's an awesome plug, guys. Also, go ahead, rate, review, subscribe, and share.
It literally takes 10 seconds to hit the 5-star.
But be
Maybe
sure to
1
share
second.
it, because if you've gotten anything out of this, that's all we ask in return, is that you get the message out there, because we want to see people's lives affected by this in one way, shape, or form, because we're all about creating a healed culture. Yeah. So thanks for joining us. And
we're gonna see you later.
is that really how they have to listen to you end it?
And we're gonna see
Oh my
you
gosh.
later.
It's like nails on a chalkboard. Goodbye.